Jai Shri Ram. I've talked before about how I was able to change my tastes in eating with respect to non vegetarian food, junk food, and other kinds of rajasic and tamasic foods. And I thought that I'd also discuss the same kind of a thing with respect to music. When I hear the kind of film songs that are really popular today, and not just film songs, also Bhangra and this other kinds of pop music, I see them as basically kind of the musical equivalent of Rajasic and Tamasic food when it comes to music, in the sense that they stimulate the same kinds of base feelings within people as such kinds of foods do as well. One element of this is the accompaniment. If you listen to old Hindi film songs, for example, on the other side of it, you'll find that you have vocals with some relatively light accompaniment, generally one instrument, maybe two, but usually just one. And the emphasis of the song is always on the vocals, both in terms of the actual musical quality of the sound and in terms of emphasizing the actual content of the lyrics themselves. Whereas I think that in the modern day, the emphasis in terms of the modern music that's popular now is much more on the accompaniment, because there's more of that accompaniment instead of just one instrument. It's either multiple instruments, or more often than not, it's the addition of some kind of electronically generated or electronically manipulated kind of a sound, and it's really not that kind of light accompaniment anymore like you saw in the old days. On the other side, it's much more overpowering to the ears over the actual lyrics than it had been in the past. The lyrics of the songs nowadays, I think, are also a lot more superficial than in the past as well. It just seems like you're able to hear and feel and relate to the emotion and the sentiment being expressed in those pre-1980s kinds of songs a lot more than you are in, say, the post-2000s, 2010 songs generally. And I know that I'm making a lot of broad generalizations here, and if there are some kind of music critics out there, I'm sure they'll harp on some specific thing that I said, but I'm trying to get people thinking about these broad trends that are pretty clear, I think, at the macro level, though maybe they're not so clear at the micro individual level of whatever specific song, specific artists, and so on. And when I draw this distinction between superficial and deep, or maybe between high-minded and base, I'm not really saying that I'm not just saying that modern music, or modern songs rather, make you start considering more superficial based topics. It's much more like they just kind of pull you into that kind of a mind space and thought process without you really being conscious of the fact that that's happening to you. Meaning that it's just kind of getting your brain to function on that level. I see it as the opposite of basically things like bhajan, sankirtan, nam japa, mantra japa, and things of that nature, where you're engaged in when you're engaged in those kinds of spiritual pursuits that also have some kind of either musical or repetitive kind of a quality. It works on your subconscious mind to help clean it and get rid of its ills and get you, quote unquote, vibrating on a higher frequency, so to speak, right? And I think that modern film songs, bhangra, pop music, and things like that do basically the opposite, in that they get you to think and operate on a much lower, quote unquote, frequency, where your lust increases, your patience decreases, your willpower decreases, and you just kind of feel like gratifying yourself. And we see that now there are also these styles of electronic and dubstep music that are basically the exemplification of this kind of a thing to the nth degree, where, I mean, I wouldn't even call these things music. They're basically just beats with no lyrics at all. And they're not even instrumental, because they're just electronically generated sounds, at a certain frequency with a certain tempo and all of those kinds of things. Now, the reason that I'm making this video is not just to criticize the modern music that I'm talking about, but like I said at the beginning about changing preferences in food, I think that changing your preferences in music is also something that you can do because it's a very malleable thing. You just have to kind of get out of the habit of listening to the kind of music that brings you down and makes you kind of the most base hedonistic version of yourself that you can. And you can just change your preferences in music as well, again, just like food. So the first tip that I would advise on this expedition, if you wanted to take that up of changing your taste here, that I would recommend to do is just delete all the music that you have currently that would fit into this kind of negative bass, low frequency kind of a genre that I've described. And again, that can come from a variety of different genres, different. They may sound very different, right? I mean, obviously film songs, Bhangra, and electronica and all of that, those are three very different genres, right? But anything that fits into this category where if you kind of can listen to this and basically be honest with yourself and say, listening to this doesn't really make me feel like my best self, and I feel like I'm going to have kind of a cleaner, more sound mind if I get out of this habit of listening to this. Just get rid of all of that music right now. Whether it's on your MP3 player, your phone, YouTube playlists, radio presets, whatever the thing, however you listen to that music, just get rid of all of that immediately, because it has this kind of an addictive quality where you want to listen to it over and over again, and you just, like I said, it kind of works on your mind and makes you more apt to listen to more of it or more similar kinds of music in the future. So you just need to totally get out of it 100% immediately. And then the next thing that I would recommend is try to get into a practice of listening to bhajans every day. It could be the same bhajans over and over again, or you could rotate them through. But listening to bhajans in a kind of context or any kind of situation that's different from just, oh, I feel like listening to bhajans right now, let me go do that, right? Because those kinds of musical tastes, again, those are the things that I'm saying that you have to change. It's not really that you're going to purposely avoid X or purposely do Y. You may have to, in the short term, purposely avoid X and purposely do Y in order to get yourself used to this kind of a new habit, right? Because anytime you try to build a habit, anytime you try to build a preference, you have to be pretty strict at the beginning because you're kind of rewiring your brain to be used to something else and to want something else. Now, once you have finished that project, then it comes naturally as a preference, like I said, but the process of getting to that point is challenging. I don't want to say difficult because, again, I'm trying to make this as easy and approachable as you can. But those would basically be my tips on going about and doing that. Then you can also kind of branch out and maybe expose yourself to a lot of different music that you hadn't listened to before. Like, for example, for me, I was never that into old film songs except for some Yesudas songs, because I'd always, from a young age, been introduced to some like 1970s era songs by KJ Yesudas that I was always into. But outside of that, was never into old songs really. And then after I started doing this kind of a thing, I got a lot more into old songs, and you can easily find a lot of old songs, whether they're film songs in Hindi or any kind of regional language. You can just type in like the name of an actor, the name of a playback singer, and jukebox after that in YouTube, and find, several hours long of compilations of different songs that have been either sung by that singer or they involve that actor in the movie. And then you can go, find those as separate videos and then download them. So that's basically the kind of thing that I wanted to talk about today, because I know that when we talk about sattvic and rajasic and tamasic, or in general about anything that kind of works on your mind and works on your brain and changes it, music is often sometimes something that people don't really think about, because they kind of think, well, film songs are film songs, right? So whether you're thinking about some kind of pleasant, good, positive film songs from the 70s, like I'm talking about, or these trashy, loud, garbage filled things that people are coming up with in the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of times people just kind of club those things together because, well, bhajans are the only thing that's positive and everything else is, worldly or whatever the case may be. But I want to get people thinking on kind of a different level where, regardless of what you're listening to, it has some effect on your brain, and kind of consciously developing different preferences for it with with the end goal that you wanted to build this certain kind of a preference for yourself so that you can listen to things that uplift you and clean your mind and don't bring you down to this kind of base, hedonistic, lusty animal that human beings are when you don't have any values. That's basically the kind of thing that I wanted to get people thinking about. It's certainly something that I do and that I've been doing, and I found it to be beneficial for me. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Jai Shri Ram.